Hello, everybody, and welcome along to this week's edition of the Rebel Wide Ball. And I suppose before we talk about any sport, we're going to look, as we usually do, back at events that happened during the week. And if you go back to last weekend, a huge number of people all over the country were speculating as to what kind of a lockdown would be imposed on this occasion, with people putting forward various theories. Would it be level 4? Would it be level 4 plus, 5 minus, level 5? I think at the end, though, you could best describe it maybe as lockdown beyond when you compare it to the last lockdown we had in this country. And when Micheál Martin descended what some people termed the Titanic stairs to give his press conference on Monday night, even though that I don't think there was any great problem with the delivery, but it did raise as many questions as it did answers for particularly various sporting organisations, from the GAA to the gyms were a crowd that were getting in the act, and so were golf clubs and everybody fighting their cause. I'm not saying the GAA were fighting their cause, because in fairness, I don't think they made any great representations. What did happen, which was a little disappointing, the inter-county championships have to continue. We'll talk about them in a minute. But they decided then to not proceed with the GAA, and after consultation, they decided not to proceed with the minor and under-20 championship. And of course, that's majorly disappointed for those young players that have put a lot of effort, and their team managements. And these competitions have been paused, and I'm not too sure what does that really mean. The Cork County Board at least took a decision that their outstanding championships, and remember there was 13 of their 16 championships had yet to be completed. They've decided to postpone everything until next March, and at least that gave clubs clarity. But the minor and under-20 championships, they're being paused, and I'm not too sure where they are going to take place or not. The GAA took a little bit of a hammering, and I suppose some of that came from the fact that cases were traced to celebrations after various victories, and nobody's going to deny that didn't happen. But as I said before, what happened at those celebrations were only reflective of what's happening all over society. The guard was down, make no mistake. But eating bread is soon forgotten, of course. That's an old saying, or maybe not so old. And during the previous lockdown, the unbelievable work that was done by GAA clubs can never be forgotten in this country. The way that they got together and helped their local community, the people who were a little bit vulnerable, and collecting food supplies and medical supplies for them. And here in Cork, I think we'd be particularly proud of the role that various Cork teams and various Cork clubs raised almost €1 million for different charities. And I think that should never be put in the back burner. The golf clubs, they were out batting, suggesting that how could you contract the virus out on a golf course and all of that. But a bit like the gyms, and they would argue that they had great sanitary, that they were I suppose adhering to all the regulations in terms of sanitisation, all of that. But I suppose it's a case of where do you stop? If you allow one crowd in, other crowds will be trying to get on the act as well. A little bit of an issue, I think, rose about the maybe overestimation of the value of various sporting organisations to the area of mental health. And maybe we need to distinguish between mental health and mental illness. And sadly, quite a number of our citizens suffer from mental illness, and nobody can say that, exercise can play some role in providing some sort of comfort to these people. But no way should we kind of go down the road that it forms a kind of a cure or anything like that. And, everything is about wellness, and I'm not denying that. But at the same time, there's a big difference, I think, between, sometimes we all have maybe mental health issues, but that's slightly different, I think, from mental illness. Now, I'm no expert in this, but at the same time, a little bit of, I think, overplaying that card took place. But anyway, I said the golf clubs were fighting a great cause, and so were the gym. I would argue that this probable lockdown affects our mature ladies more than anything else. And laughing all as you may like hairdressers, and I know when you look at this particular broadcast, you say I don't have any problem in that regard. Maybe I don't, but to be fair to hairdressers, I think they did a great job, and I'm told they did a great job. But nobody was kind of making a big cost for the role that they play in society, just as well as, whatever they provide. But there's a lot of our senior citizens that make their way to hairdressing salons once a week, and it's not all about turning the grey black or the black white or whatever. It's about that particular social interaction. And I thought that was maybe lost a little bit in translation during the week. Then we had the whole scenario with the track and trace, and my God, like there's problems good over here, and I'd say if you only knew the half-fit story in terms of what now constitutes a close contact. And, it emerged that the HSE told people that they should contact their close contacts themselves. And I know I'm probably missing something here, but what is greatly wrong with that? And I think the reason why they don't want it to happen, obviously, is that it could cause some confusion. Like I know during the week a person was, had tested positive and nobody had made contact with them from the HSE. And like, it's not the nature of this particular broadcast to be in any way critical, because I don't know how they're able to do what they're supposed to be doing. But I do think now, like, that there's the definition of close contacts has wide implications, and there's broad spectrums, and we have teams this weekend. We have the Offaly senior hurling team that are in a bit of trouble. We have the I think the Roscommon footballers, and when somebody tests positive, how can they decide actually who was a close contact? We'll give you an example. If somebody contracts the virus and they test positive and all of that, if they sat down and spoke to you for 10 minutes and they were wearing a mask, is that a close contact? And we have this situation in schools as well, good all over the place, that there is savage confusion as regards what is and what is not a close contact. But look, we're living in these strange times, and being critical of people that are trying their best maybe is not the answer either, but I suppose just to make that particular point. So the weekend, what's on in terms of sport? Well, obviously with all our clubs and everything, we've forgotten out of that. But in terms of GA, we have the concluding stages of the National Football League round 7 in the 4 divisions. And to start in Division 3 first, the Cork footballers, and congratulations to them after their victory last weekend over Low. They're Division 3 champions, and they move up into Division 2. But their match this weekend against Longford will not take place because basically Longford didn't want Cork travelling up. They thought it was a waste of time, and Longford are playing Louth in a week's time in a Leinster Championship, and they felt that their weekend would be better spent preparing in another manner rather than playing Cork. That disappointed from a Cork point of view. I'm not too sure really, like travelling up the country and playing an understringed Longford team. I don't know what is being gained by that, but of course it brings into question about the integrity of the league, and it does affect other teams because scoring differences and all that could come into it. Then with the Waterford senior footballers, too often they grab the headlines, but they had their I suppose their hour of glory, if you like. They issued a lengthy statement where they weren't going to fulfil their fixture by travelling to Antrim. They wanted the game played in a neutral venue, and the GA seem to be holding tight in this, that they don't do neutral venues in league for league matches, and so that match doesn't go ahead. And as I said, then we have situations. We had over the past couple of weeks, we had problems with COVID in Fermanagh, in Armagh, some in Kerry, and of course Leitrim last weekend refusing to travel to a match as well. So there are problems all over the case. I mentioned the Offaly senior hurlers, the Roscommon senior footballers for their match against Cavan next week after they had a great win over Armagh last weekend. And we have the GPA calling for more strenuous testing. Sometimes you'd say to yourself, what is all this for? Would people be better off to call a halt to it? But then on the other hand, I know that the government want to go ahead because, going back to what we said earlier, people look forward to these matches, and make no mistake, they do. It's great to have something to look forward to in terms of sport at the weekend. But like sometimes you wonder, like, is it worth all the hassle and all this testing? And I'm not saying that anybody would be hiding symptoms. Like, I know of 3 people that tested positive this week, and none of them had symptoms. And you know something, it would never have been, that nobody wouldn't have known what had happened, except that I think it started with some lady who had to go for a procedure in a hospital, and just because she got tested and it showed positive, and then there was a chain reaction from that. But had that lady not gone into hospital, there was 3 people that I know, and you probably know people as well, that had the virus, and they didn't even know about it. And again, let's state the fact that we're not trying to underestimate the challenges that people face when they contract this. As I said to you before, we know of plenty of examples. But anyway, back to what's happening. As well as the league football being completed, and there's no such thing as league finals or anything like that. Everything will be sorted by Sunday evening. The hurling championship begins, and there are 2 games in the 2 provinces, and that's all we have in hurling. But unlike the football championship, which starts the week after, the hurling setup, there's a backdoor system. Sometimes this confuses me as regards the GA, that they seem to have a different set of rules when it comes to hurling and football. The football is going to be played in a straight knockout. I don't see anything wrong with that for this occasion, but why they have to have a backdoor in hurling and not in football, it baffles me a little bit. So the first match that will happen is in the Leinster Championship between Dublin and Laois. And look, none of these 2 teams are going to feature at the tail end of the championship. And I remember last year, was it, that when Laois beat Dublin, it was being upped big time as a major shock. Dublin are not, they do their bit for hurling. They're not a major force in hurling. So that game is a case of, well, whichever one wins it, we'll go through to the semi-final of the Leinster Championship. But that's about it. The big teams in Leinster are obviously Galway. You might be a little bit confused about this, but Galway do play in the Leinster Championship. Galway, Wexford and Kilkenny. And down in Munster, we have Clare versus Limerick on Sunday. The Laois Dublin game is Saturday. And all the odds here are, everybody's telling us that Limerick are going to win it. And, Limerick have lost a few players through injury and maybe retirements. But you still fancy them that they're going to emerge victorious in that one. It wouldn't have been a great weekend for Clare, losing the minor and the under-21. And if they are the minor and the under-20 championship, and they lost next Saturday, their 3 main teams would have been all beaten in just over 7 days. And there was, a couple of years ago, I remember people pointing the fact that Clare were way ahead of Cork in terms of player development and all of that, how quickly situations change, if you wish. So that's kind of the limited GA action that we're having. But, like, as I said to you before morning, there'll be probably changes in terms of what else may happen in these COVID-related cases. Then we have, for those of you that follow the oval ball and, international rugby, a lot of people have, followed. They mightn't be the, huge rugby fans otherwise, but the international, and I suppose if we go way back to amateur rugby, the 5 Nations Championship, it was then, that was before they dragged Italy in for their 5 hammerings every year. I don't know how many matches Italy have won in this championship, but not a huge amount of them. But anyway, it resumes this weekend. And of course, if you go back to March, that's when really COVID was brought onto our radar, because remember that match was cancelled, and I remember there was ferocious grief as well because the supporters were allowed in Italy. It was all over the place, and no doubt that, not saying they wouldn't have come anyway, look, not saying that, but COVID did arrive in with those supporters. But there'll be no supporters on this occasion, and they play on Saturday at 3:30, and Ireland will obviously win that rugby match. But and in case you've forgotten, like in the 3 previous matches they played, they had good wins over Wales and Scotland, but unfortunately lost 24-12 to England, so the Triple Crown is gone. But Ireland can still win this championship, the 6 Nations Championship. They obviously have to win and get the bonus point on Saturday, and then the following week they travel to Paris, and obviously that'll be the big test. And it's always when a rugby team is announced, you kind of at the first one, you know, who's getting their first cap, and the two guys in this occasion are Hugo Keenan and Will Connors are the two players. So that's how rugby, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but you know, the rugby set up like there's the under 20, which won't take place this year, but the women's international would take place, and that has been hit with a COVID positive case, which meant the team had to be changed after it was announced by the manager earlier today. And that'll just give you another example of the volatile times we're living in. The Premier League returns, and I know some of you saying, have we got interest in the Premier League in this from this particular broadcast? But and sometimes it happens that when you're kind of associated with one sport that you may not have any interest in others, but I can kind of assure you we do. And I remember growing up down in South Kerry, and actually there was 4 in our family, 4 brothers, and this is not today or yesterday. And my late father was a Manchester United fan. You wouldn't believe that. So the 4, well, let's see now, who did we follow? I was a United fan, and there was a brother following City, Chelsea, and Spurs. They were the 4 teams in our household. And actually can remember outside, God, these are such different times. Back in the day, outside Mass in a small church in a place called Treendrock in South Kerry, there was the priest used to come over from Kilmare to this remote area to say Mass once a week. And Father Kennelly was, I remember he'd been there around our time, and he was a Manchester United fan, and I remember he used to come out to the church after, and those, I don't know, there were probably 10 of us used to hang around together, even that. And because he was United, and I think there was 2 of us that were United fans. Maybe we felt we were closer to God because of that. But anyway, that's the story of the Premier League. So that's probably our look at sport and life this weekend. Look, until we meet and talk again, take care.